I am on record as not being the biggest fan of the Digimon World games. In particular, the Digimon World games that are all focused on the raising and death cycle of Digimon. I personally find them to have a weird difficulty curve or spike, and do find the moment-to-moment gameplay to be unsatisfying, especially with things like having to find toilets or make sure you've got portable toilets for your Digimon in cases like Digimon World 1 and Next Order. But undeniably, Digimon World is iconic and an important part of the franchise. With the GOG Dream List sitting around 100,000 wishes for Digimon World to get ported to PC properly, and as now literally having a new Digimon World or digital server in Shambala. So I wanted to do a video pitching my dream Digimon World game, taking the elements that I legitimately like and folding in more elements that I think could make it more enjoyable for more people without sacrificing what makes it a Digimon World game. So in today's video, let's give that a shot. What is up, digital companions? My name is Karn EX and welcome back to another video, and yes, today I'm going to give a shot at pitching my idea for a Digimon World game. This is not going to be an in-depth pitch, like I'm not trying to make the actual game here, but more talk about things that I would like to see in the next game. And I recognize that I'm coming at this from someone who is not a massive fan of the World games, so I hope you'll understand that if you are really mechanically deep into these games, I'm speaking as something of a layman here, someone who isn't a massive fan of these games but really wants to be, and what I would like to see, while hopefully considering the opinions of hardcore World fans and casuals. So I think something fun to kick things off, as Digimon World games very much homage the V-Pets of Digimon. Digimon World 1 is basically an attempt to make a full-on video game out of the V-Pet system. I think I would like to see maybe an evolution system more based on existing V-Pets. I had this notion in my head of V-Pets from the real world being the Digivice you use in the game, much like how the Digivice of Digimon World 1 and Next Order seems to be a real-world digital monster V-Pet. But instead of that just being your Digivice, it would also shape the path your egg could go on. So, you could get the new Iliad server V-Pets and follow evolution branches based on those. I'm not hard set on the idea, but I think it would be a fun concept, and you could release new V-Pet skins as DLC, which modern gaming companies love to do. Something else I think is pretty essential and is what I would hook my Digimon World game into is multiplayer. I saw a lot of people during the pre-release and release of Time Stranger begging for multiplayer, but I just don't think a Persona-style Shin Megami Tensei-esque RPG is the best platform for multiplayer in Digimon, but I do think that it is in a World game based on raising. Digimon World 1 has inherent save data based battling. The ability to do that battling either locally or online would be huge. Plus, I would love it to have local or online co-op too. Raise creatures together, do quests together. If it's a fetch quest, you have a combined quest inventory similar to, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Digimon Masters. So if it says, oh, you need, 10 Tengumon feathers, and your friend gets 5 and you get 5, that completes the quest. And learning from other monster taming games, there are elements of Palworld that I actually do think would work well for Digimon. The elements of shared resources, bases, doing dungeons together would also lend themselves well to Digimon World. Palworld also has systems where individual pals can do different stuff. Some mine, some plant seeds, some chop wood, etc. And I think that would be a perfect idea for that kind of base building, town building element that Digimon World games have. In fact, that is something that I would love to make even more expressive and more personal in a World game. Rather than just recruiting Digimon that come back to a base or a hometown, you can actually shape that hometown, almost having like an Animal Crossing or Sims type part to the town building and recruiting mechanics. And when you recruit, let's say, Agumon and you get his fire ability, yes, you can use it to, cook food or whatever, but also that unlocks like flame reinforced iron that you can do for other stuff, I think those elements of Animal Crossing, Sims, and Pacopia could be really good, specifically again for the town building vibe that Digimon World 1, Redigitized, Next Order all had, but I don't think explored as fully as they could have been. Instead, often Digimon just inserting themselves into existing locations. Obviously, like Animal Crossing for example, you can have designated locations like the Mayor building and Tom Nook's house and stuff. That would be where like Gigimon lives or like certain things, the Tanemon farm, but it'd be really good to be able to expand those things or put things where you want in empty lots, which again kind of has been a feature but but not quite. I personally would revert back to the one partner per player idea, not two like Next Order, but I would add systems that would enable things like in-battle DNA Digivolution. Obviously, if you had a friend and they had a Stingmon and you had an XVmon, you could do an in-battle DNA Digivolution to Paildramon, but I think there should also be reserve Digimon. So you can still DNA and Digicross yourself if you've got no friends or no one to play with, and those reserve Digimon would take on those Palworld-esque traits I talked about, each having a specific skill like farming, watering, cooking, etc. I know people are a little hesitant with world games to have the same kind of expansive storage and party system that story games have got, instead of preferring that more intimate one-on-one partner experience, but I think we need to hit some kind of balance here. Like with the Vital Bracelet, I think it was a good compromise on the VPET system. While admittedly it didn't have the poop system, which some people like, you could raise I think 2 Digimon at a time, switching one out between your main and your secondary, and then the rest would go into the storage on the app. I think you could have that be a thing in Digimon World going forward, but you'd have to strike the right balance. I don't think the death system should be erased, but you should have at least the option somehow to create things like a living field guide or something like that. So maybe initially you keep storage very limited and that it expands as you maybe beat the first loop of the game, beat the main story, and then when you can do like a new game plus equivalent, you can then start storing more and more Digimon outside of the town and instead in your box. This would also then give you the opportunity to do things like Digicross with multiple Digimon. I would love some suggestions on how to balance this for a Digimon VPET-esque experience though, because while I think it's a fun idea, I do understand that maybe it would throw off the point of a Digimon World game, so let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. From a narrative and story perspective, I definitely want the presentation to be more similar to Time Stranger, in as much that it's not just going to be either static shots or these kind of like avatars on screen with text boxes. I much prefer the animated cutscenes that Time Stranger did, with more dynamic text in the field, and then when you talk to someone, it's voiced more often, which again, Digimon World Next Order definitely had. Redigitize had voices too, but just a little bit more dynamism with stuff outside of set cutscenes I think would be good. And yes, English voice acting in English. I'd have, honestly, voice acting in as many languages as possible. I would personally set the story in Shambala. Well, of course, it's tempting to have the next story game set in Shambala. I mean, there's nothing saying we can't have both. I think it would really mean something if the next Digimon World game focused on this new digital world, and might be a bigger selling motivator because Shambala seems to be quite popular. I don't have a huge outline of what plot I would do here, but I feel like Kunlun recruiting you to fight the 4 perilous beasts and eventually Enmamon would be a good starting point, with perhaps the Tente Hachibushu as allies and boss fights, which would be similar to Time Stranger, but honestly, when you have these things set up like the Tente Hachibushu, which are very similar to the Olympus 12, there's only so many things you can do with that. I think it would be also a perfect opportunity to focus on Digimon that were absent from Time Stranger, especially modern ones from Shambala, but also things like the Spirits, who are of course intrinsically connected to Susanoo-mon, who basically founded Shambala on Kunlun's behalf. It also means if they bring the visual fidelity on par with Time Stranger for the next World game, having high quality models, animations, etc. of things like the Spirit Digimon, the new Shambala Digimon, the Tente Hachibushu, Marine Bullmon, things like that, then when they make the next story game, they can have all of the Digimon that were already in Time Stranger and all of the Digimon that were in the World game combined, which I think is honestly a goal of formerly Habu and now Hara. Speaking of the Spirits, I actually think this would be a perfect opportunity to use Spirit Evolution as a separate, non-raisable mechanic. Now this is probably going to be the first time that I truly lose a lot of you, but imagine fighting solo as a spirit or alongside the Digimon you're raising. It would realize a lot of people's dreams for more games where you play as the Digimon rather than raising them, while still working in a Digimon World setting. And then if you still want to have individual Digimon use the spirits, for town building purposes you could give the spirit to a specific quest Digimon to get all the spirits back at town or in your storage, to form Digimon like Emperor Greymon, Magna Garurumon, and Susanoo-mon from all 10 spirits. So, you know, maybe you give a Goblimon out in a field the Spirit of Earth and it becomes Grottemon or Gigasmon and then it joins your town, you know? That'd be a cool way to do it. You could still use the Spirit of Earth to Spirit Digivolve in battle and help out your Digimon partner. The game's already going to be set up with the co-op to have multiple Digimon on the same side fighting in a battle, so you would just kind of take the place of one of the multiplayer co-op Digimon, just single player. You could probably do it in co-op too. Imagine teaming up with your best friend, both of you Spirit Digivolving and fighting Digimon. That'd be sick. I also think I have found a really good compromise to put Appmon in the game, but to soft launch them, rather than just putting them in the regular field guide, which I personally am absolutely fine with. I thought instead there could be optional app dungeons, focused specifically on battle, that you go into with your Digivice. Think of it like the classic Kingdom in Kingdom Hearts 3, where you pull up the gummy phone and then you play these like classic minigames, but instead of 2D sprites, Game & Watch style stuff, you get teleported through your phone into the net ocean of Appmon, and it becomes similar to the dungeons from Digimon Adventure PSP, where maybe we can have more multiverse crossovers. But it would be a way to have Appmon and even indeed have an Appmon field guide without feeling like we have to force Appmon into the main game. You could keep the roster of Appmon smaller, maybe have more represented but not recruitable, in a way that feels both lore consistent and not too far for people who are still very anti-Appmon. I would have difficulty options here, but I would make the difficulty options actually change some pretty core fundamentals to the game, which again, you might disagree with. So on normal mode, and this is an example, it's not hard and fast, obviously you have to consider game balancing, I would say it'd be pretty standard stuff. Battles are average difficulty, scaling through the game, Digimon die, they poop, etc. Then for hard, it would be mainly the same, just more difficult. Bosses have more moves, better AI, healing items, etc. You could even maybe get into a slightly more Souls-like zone here. I don't really want a Souls-like, but in as much that you actually have to really pay attention to the boss's move patterns and things like that. And then I thought about a mode called Survive. Can you tell that I'm trying my best to reference as many parts of the franchise as I can that make sense here? Yes, the Survive mode or Survive difficulty. So battle loss would be insta-death. The age system would be accelerated. This is the beach that makes you old. Battles are significantly harder, and when a Digimon dies from specifically battle, not old age, you would lose its entire Digi-Egg or V-Pet and have to raise a completely new branch. So to clarify what that means, let's say you hatched, we're going to skip to Rookie because the babies don't matter so much here, I mean they will matter, but for ease of explanation, you get a Gazimon, and one of its branches lets it go to Darulumon and another lets it go to Fangmon. Well, in battle, not old age, your Fangmon is deleted. It reverts back to the Digi-Egg, and when you get Gazimon again, Fangmon is no longer an option. Survive mode is just that. Try to survive. It is an inbuilt Nuzlocke-esque mode, providing a much greater challenge for those already familiar with World-type games. But if we've got Digimon Survive, we also need a Digimon Adventure. Adventure mode, adventure difficulty is how I would address people who don't enjoy Digimon World games, who want a different kind of challenge or maybe no challenge at all. I know this is going to get some like Git Good comparisons and people are not going to be happy about this, but I think more options for more people is always good. First of all, I would remove the age system in adventure mode. Age doesn't really seem to be a thing in the Digimon Adventure continuity for the partners anyway, outside of a few examples, and it would remove that real kind of like race against time feeling that you get with the age system and the death system in World games. Obviously, battles would be easier, death would be harder on battle loss. Not sure which mechanics will carry on from previous game, but let's say the heart system, for example, you're not guaranteed to lose a heart if you lose battle, and I would remove the poop system too. If it's good enough for the VB, it's good enough for an adventure mode in a World game. Those are kind of the main things that I would do for the next World game, and diving more into this narrative I think is something I'd like to do in future, but I think the things I've laid out are what I would personally like to see and I think would make a good game for existing and new World fans. The tapestry of Shambala is already so rich, this battle between the Tente Hachibushu, you know, the Sane Ketsu, the Sanmyojin, Kunlun being teased in Time Stranger. It's just really, in my opinion, the perfect setup for a World game. I think seeing those in the Pendulum colors already was a nice little tea, a nice little setup. Plus it would bring in new Century Digimon that we haven't really seen outside of V-Pets and the card game into actual full-fledged video games outside of China, like Nejamon, Erlangmon, Taketomon, etc. It would be so good. But that's it, my initial pitch for what I would do for the next Digimon World game. There are probably flaws here, like I say, I'm not a massive Digimon World head, so there's probably things I've overlooked, and obviously I'm not a game designer, so there might be balanced things that I haven't considered. But this is the beautiful thing about the YouTube kind of system. We have a comment section, so build this idea. Let me know what you want to steal, what you would tweak with my idea in the comments down below. I'd love to see it. Thank you to my sovereign of Shambala, ZDK14, as well as everyone else who supports me over on patreon.com/Karn EX, and over in Iliad, my YouTube channel members. I appreciate you all so much too. I'll see you next time when we go digital. Bye bye.